Hello, good morning everyone. My name's Ed Couchman and my day job is to look after our agency teams that service both the media community and the creative community here in the UK for Facebook and Instagram. I've been at Facebook for about 4 years. Previous to that I was at a UK broadcaster called Channel 4, which I'm sure many of you know, and I worked there for about 5 years. So I think I've got around 10-15 minutes this morning and then maybe about 5 minutes for questions. And I guess I wanted to start off by maybe trying to frame how Facebook views video or sight, sound and motion. And I think it's fair to say that we see it as part of a much broader trend, especially a trend that's happening amongst millennials more rapidly with greater velocity. And that is an increase or rise of what we think is a more visual-based language. And we see this manifesting itself in many different ways. So we see increase of stickers, emojis, photos, and video content production and content being used more and more and more and rapidly gaining. So for example, we have an increase of number of emojis sent this time this year versus last is an increase of 385%. And when you have a kind of window of the world of 1.1 billion, we kind of think that's happening globally. And we think as people are living their lives, especially millennials, they're navigating that world in a more visual-based language. And that's not coincidental. We know us as humans that we process information visually far quicker than words, of course. And if you kind of thought about your Facebook kind of presence, then if you kind of rewind back to 2010, maybe your iPhone 4, and you're on holiday in Italy, as this kind of example tries to illustrate, then that might have just been a check-in back in kind of that sort of time, 2010. And then maybe you might use videos. Right now you might have your iPhone 5 or 6 or 6S, and you kind of might be shooting some video as well. And then we think by around end of 2017, that of those average 10 stories in your news feed, that 9 of them will be video-based. And that obviously will, of course, be advertising, and also that will be kind of content from me, you, friends and family, etc. And then fast forward further out, then we can really see this world with Oculus Rift, which is our virtual reality headset. And it's a version of that goes on sale at Christmas for £99, actually nicknamed internally as Oculus Thrift. And you kind of, boom, boom, the bad jokes continue, John. Yeah, we see this as a real stepping stone to actually making those richer, more immersive experiences, essentially. And just to give you a sense of the velocity of growth of how we video views. So I spoke this time last year here, actually, and it was just at the end of the summer, and we'd all kind of poured cold water on our heads for the Ice Bucket Challenge, and that video figure was 1 billion views every single day. And then you fast forward to where we are today, and that is actually 8 billion video views, and that's the number we announced just a few weeks ago. And the 75%, so the vast majority of those on mobile devices. And here in the UK, again, to give you a sense of that acceleration, that velocity, that's growing around 88% year on year. And what we found is over the course of that year, that advertisers, brands are really starting to play with and understand some of the potential that Facebook has for communications and helping brands move some high-level metrics of awareness and consideration, but also purchasing products. And we're seeing a real vibrant advertising canvas being produced. Got some examples of the work on screen. And we're seeing, at the best case example, advertisers creating and brands creating work which is just bespoke for Facebook. And I just wanted to draw out, essentially, or try to unpack for you some of the lessons that we're learning about what makes good content, what makes good video on Facebook. And this is true for millennials, of course, but it's also true for the wider population. And I think the first idea we have is this notion of what we're calling a 3-second audition, that in a world where you're on your mobile, you're on your smartphone, and you're moving through your news feed, I'm going to return to that theme of feeds later, that actually you need to produce kind of thumb-stopping content, that you need to be highly relevant and draw the user, the person in, to make sure that their thumbs stop, and you need to pass that 3-second audition. And then when you kind of need to embrace this thought around actually most people watch their video with their sound off and think about how you can communicate with a sound off world. Some people kind of akin this to maybe to silent movies. Obviously, we see some advertisers and content producers kind of and broadcasters using subtitles, but essentially think about how can I convey my messages? How can I resonate with who's seeing this in a world where they're not having sound? Or how can I encourage them to turn sound on? And then I think one of the most frequent questions that I get asked is, what's the right length of content? Is it is it 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds? Is it a minute? Now, what is the right length of content for Facebook or for your mobile device? And I think we don't like to think of it as seconds, but think of it as stories, and think about how can you create a story? How can you create something that's really going to engage with the audience you want it to kind of communicate with? And then finally, this fourth idea around what sounds rather grand, atomized storytelling. And I think the best way to try and illustrate that really is to try and use a TV analogy around it's much more like Friends than Game of Thrones. So bear with me. So any Game of Thrones fans? We all love a good siege in King's Landing. But essentially, you have to watch every single episode of Game of Thrones because it's a complex narrative arc, there's characterization, and essentially if you drop 2 or 3 episodes, you don't view them, you're kind of pretty lost in what's actually happening. Versus this idea of Friends, where clearly there's an overarching arc of a storyline, but actually you can watch those 24-minute episodes in isolation and still understand what's happening and still laugh and still be really entertained. Actually, Friends is probably showing my age, isn't it? Because millennials clearly don't watch Friends. Modern Family or whatever it might be. But the point is this, that they can be encapsulated, they can be standalone, but actually can you tell a broader, higher level story if you watched all of those individual pieces of content together? And this is what we mean by atomized storytelling. And we're seeing this done really well in the UK, and I just want to draw out 2 examples. The first is from EE, Everything Everywhere. They're a telco provider in the UK, and they have a core product benefit. They have 4G, essentially. And what they want to do, and many of you might have seen the buffer face campaign previously, it's the face you pull, your buffer face, the pull when you're waiting for your content to download. You're waiting for that crucial moment that you want to watch, and you pull that face, which is a great piece of insight. And we ran the standard 30-second spots as kind of an cover build and increase of frequency and incremental reach. But actually, we were fortunate enough to have access to Kevin Bacon when they're actually shooting that ad. And what we want to do then is think about some of the data that we have, some of the insights that we have, and can we make that campaign more relevant? Still have large amounts of reach, but can we make that campaign more relevant? So if you're one of the 12 million fans of The Voice in the UK, actually the most important moment for you, which you don't want to buffer, is when the chair's about to turn. Or if you're a Londoner and you have Uber and you want to get your Uber home, the most important buffer moment for you is when you're booking your Uber. And so what we did was we created using Kevin, 3 bespoke different videos that pulled that out and then only delivered that content to those audience segmentations. And I think the really positive news for us is it's kind of creating work that works. That actually you were twice as likely to watch the more personalised video than you were the actual standard ad, and you're twice as likely to go and click on that and visit the EE site. And the best performing one, which incidentally was The Voice, you were 3 times as more likely to kind of click on that ad. And then we have this idea of that kind of storytelling, and many of you, if you've been living in the UK, you've probably seen the Tiny Dancer ad from John Lewis. Beautiful ad, well-crafted storytelling, very traditional TV spot, kind of sound over track, and that final frame where you kind of reveal who the brand is. And we kind of think that's not going to really pass the 3-second audition for us, that actually you're not going to get someone's attention those first 3 seconds with that end of TV spot kind of reveal who the brand is. So some simple recuts of bringing the brand to the front and centre to play it in those first 3 seconds is really important. And then what we did was increase the reach of that campaign over the kind of first few days. But when people have engaged in that campaign, so they've engaged, they've either clicked or viewed it, and then we've kind of delivered some sequential messaging to them, some behind-the-scenes footage of who the dancer is and who the brother is. And then also, John Lewis share their data with us, so we know who are John Lewis insurance customers, and then we can kind of give them a slightly different message. And I think that really brings together this idea of kind of storytelling, using data, and then moving people through the purchase funnel to actually go and take action as a result of seeing the creative. And I think that's really kind of Facebook and Instagram at its best. I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that actually that 3-second rule, then actually it's kind of based its thoughts on some data. And this is a snapshot of some of the research we've done around actually where's the value of the campaign driven. And what we find is that actually, and for the ease of my maths, I'm going to just say it's 10%. So let me try and talk you through this chart. So cumulative ad impact. So let's say ad campaigns move 10 percentage points for the duration of that campaign, yeah? Then actually what we found is in the first 3 seconds, 4.7% points moved, and in the first 10 seconds, 65% moved. So what we feel is that actually there's not necessarily a direct correlation between length of content time viewed and impact of the campaign. And what we find is the majority of that value of the entire campaign is delivered in the first 3 and 10 seconds. And I just wanted to talk about how we know that the world has shifted to mobile. This is very familiar. We know that it took, or we believe it probably took TV about 67 years to sell 1 billion units. It took smartphones 4. And we're constantly underestimating the speed and velocity of which our kind of uses of Facebook is accessed via mobile only. So in the UK, it's 26 million people every day. But we think it's worth kind of breaking down what we think of mobile. Mobile is essentially an app world. That actually, if you think about your own behavior, the majority of your time is spent in apps, I imagine not on Safari. And then if you look at the app world, right now we think there's about 3.1 million apps, roughly about half-half between iOS and Android. And the average person uses about 27 apps in total, but actually 80% of their time is spent in their top 3 apps. And that's a really challenging world, we think, for brands, advertisers, and broadcasters trying to get standout in the app world and then trying to get users to engage with those apps. And we think one way through that is this idea of feed, that actually how placing a filter to kind of bring out the things that are most important to you, either chronologically or by interest or by relevance. How can you kind of surface the most important stuff to you that you really want to see? For Facebook, we think that's a kind of more personalized newspaper, if you like. Twitter obviously has a more chronological approach, as do Instagram. And this idea of feed, we think then is kind of brings out this idea of discovery, that when you're finding things out for the first time, when you're entering the public consciousness, that happens in a feed-based environment. And we also think a feed-based environment is a really right one for advertisers. It's a really deep, immersive canvas. And I guess it'd be incorrect of me not to be on stage and talk about viewability, ad fraud, or ad blockers, and I'm sure they have been flavor topics of conversation. But what I want to do is just really highlight that actually right now, by viewability standards, the ad on the left-hand side isn't viewable. Because actually, if you just sit at the very top of that cut-off point, that we've actually cut off some of the logo. So it's not 100% in viewport, versus the banner ad on the other side, which is 100% viewable. And I guess we'd all have our subjective view on what is providing the most value to the advertiser. The point being, though, it clearly, hopefully clearly, demonstrates how much more we have to do as an industry around viewability. And I really admire some of the work the IAB are doing, but we're really calling them to kind of accelerate that even quicker, because we think we can see these pretty strong headwinds around ad blocking, ad viewability, and ad fraud. I think the digital industry really needs to work together to overcome those and to ensure that advertisers and brands have the confidence to continue to invest their marketing budgets. So when you kind of think about this shift to mobile, we kind of think it has these kind of 3 fundamental challenges. That actually, firstly, it's really hard to measure. It's cookies. We all have 2 or 3 devices. We don't know who people are across those. It's pretty tough to compare between digital, between Facebook, between TV, between digital outdoor, etc. And also this kind of ecosystem that's starting to be built to support the shift to mobile, but largely it still needs work and still needs development. And we're trying to tackle all 3 of those things, not in isolation, but working with our partners to try and help understand those and to try and solve them. Our first kind of attempt at this was an introduction of TRP buying, essentially. And this is really aimed at the TV buying community to make buying video on Facebook really easy. So actually, if you wanted to buy the same audience you're buying on TV, then actually you can do that on Facebook. You can buy males 18-34. And then that kind of delivery is then verified by Nielsen as well. We also think it's important to try and think about measurement and what that might look like. And it's also important, we think, to measure the impact of a campaign on the actual device that the campaign was seen. And we've kind of built out some tools that help do that with kind of measuring brand impact on mobiles through a polling device. I thought it'd also be interesting to share just a little further out kind of what we're working on, especially when you think about distribution and kind of how broadcasters might kind of partner with us. I think the first thing to kind of acknowledge that Facebook's great right now for watching one piece of video content. You're kind of in your news feed, you're moving through that, and you're seeing a really funny video from Lad's Bible or TV clip from last night from The Apprentice or whatever it might be. And it's great for that one piece of video. But actually, if you wanted to go and watch more video content, then it's actually pretty difficult to do. So we're working on what we're loosely calling kind of suggested videos, which is a... actually, could you play the video for me? If you just hover over the phone, you can just press play. So I think it'll probably articulate much better what we're trying to do than me giving a voiceover.
Oh my gosh! Pull the parachute! Pull it out! No.
Could you just stop that? As you can see, it's a really magical experience. It really is immersive, that takes you there in just a kind of sound-on world with no pictures. It's a new experiment they were trying. Brilliant. Okay, so essentially, you're watching a video. Instead of going back to your news feed, what we'll do is surface other content, short-form content, which is similar. So if you're watching a recipe or a cooking piece, we'll surface other recipes. If you're watching some sports clips, then we'll surface some other sports clips. And we're actively working with professional content producers, archive catalogs, and broadcasters to try and build out that kind of suggested video idea. So that's a great way to carry on seeing kind of short-form content. So you're in the mood for watching video, here's some more stuff you might want to watch. But it's still short-form. We do think Facebook has a great opportunity around long-form content as well, that actually if you want to go and watch something, then actually Facebook's a great place to do that. I'm sure you're all fans of The Rock, and if you are, you'd be thrilled to know, big fans of The Rock, you'd be thrilled to know that he's starring in a new HBO show called Ballers, which apparently is a comedy drama around a bunch of retiring professional football players in the US. And actually, HBO partnered with us to launch the first 2 episodes, the first episode of each of those 2 dramas on Facebook. So kind of full-length program. And that's kind of just like sampling, I think. It helps build some buzz and awareness around the program. I think where it's a bit interesting that Ballers actually only has something like 21,000 fans. The Rock, and I'm sure those fans will know, has 49 million fans on Facebook. And you can see this real opportunity actually using some of the talent in the shows, using their community of fans to really raise awareness around that and really drive viewing, not just on Facebook, but actually viewing in the linear schedule at the same time as well. And I think building out that kind of deeper, richer video experience is really important. So if we're going to get to a world by the end of 2017 when 9 out of 10 stories you see on Facebook is video, we fundamentally believe that much of that needs to be professionally produced content, as you'd expect that, as well as content from your friends, family, and loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I think we've got time for just one question from the audience. Does anybody dare ask a question? We have a question over there. Could you wait for the microphone to get to you? And then when you speak, can you say who you are and where you're from, please? Which company? Thanks.
I'm Famida. I'm from DSTV in South Africa. What I wanted to find out from you is where is the share of advertising money coming from? Where is Facebook stealing from?
Good question.
I missed the final point.
Where is the money coming from? I think, do you mean, is it coming from TV spend or digital?
I want to understand, exactly where you're taking share from.
I guess the first thing I need to say is that to reassure advertisers, all the money they do spend with us, Mark very kindly gives back to charity to make the world a better place. So it's all and we've obviously just opened an office in South Africa, which we think is fantastic, and that's our first local office in Africa, and we're really proud of that as well. I think that's really important to call out. Thirdly, the question. So I believe the vast majority of spend we're attracting from advertisers right now is actually from digital budgets, so kind of second to third kind of tier VOD campaigns, essentially. Not any of the broadcasters spend whatsoever for a multitude of reasons. And then I think we're also picking up some investment from press and outdoor teams. Personally, I think some of those comms channels are some of the weaker on the media schedule, but I don't believe we've yet even touched any significant proportion of TV investment. Does that answer directly? Good.
Thank you. Brilliant. Well, a round of applause for Ed, everybody, please. Thank you.
Thank you, John.